Hello all, Philip with Philip's Computer Repair again. How are y'all this morning? Well, so I noticed that I don't really talk too much about electrical work. That is one of my, services within my business of Philip's Computer Repair. I don't ask me why I don't really talk about it much. It never really dawns on me, but it is something I am very much capable of doing. But I do know where my limitations are at, just because not a journeyman. I'm not licensed. However, I do know most, if not all, of the electrical codes that you got to follow with the NEC, the National Electrical Code guidelines. So, but I said I do know my limitations as far as, so if a customer needs help with something, I generally have a good idea about where I need to kind of stop. But typically, I'll do everything from the breaker box all the way to whatever outlet or whatever is going on. I can typically fix that. But if it's like adding on a breaker box with a high amount of amps, like I've got a shed in my backyard that I have power ran out there, 60 amps, and I actually hired some electricians just because one of the pieces of code of the NEC that needed to happen was digging conduit like 5 feet into the ground, and yeah, I wasn't about to do that. No, I'm not. I'm sorry. My body couldn't take it. My body couldn't take it. But anywho, talking to you about some general rule of thumbs, if in case you decide that you want to try and be a DIYer with this. Messing with electricity really isn't that difficult. When it comes to the classic, as most electricians say, the Romex, 12 gauge Romex or 14 gauge Romex. It's typically in a white or yellow rubber coating. It typically comes with a ground, which is typically not coated in a shield. It's typically just bare copper. Then you'll have uh, white and black. The white is neutral, which basically helps uh, keep, whenever you turn the power off to something, it actually goes off and shuts. It does not continue on. That way, that way when you shut the power off to that, any excess power takes the line of the neutral, and it continues on. That way, if you have like maybe a smart device or something, such as you'll see one in my background, uh, smart devices, you do typically want to use the neutral, the low, neutral, and ground, because there's too much foreign voltage that can happen, and because that smart devices have their own network card, you want to make sure all the components in the smart devices don't get fried, and not using the all of the lines is very imperative, and it can do some damage, not to you but to the device. Second rule of thumb is make sure you go and turn off the breaker. Not necessarily the main breaker, but at least the breaker to the circuit that you're going to be working on. For me personally, I typically try to, well, no, I'll take that back. I've got a 13-year-old, and I swear, whenever I do some kind of project or whatever, I either try and wait to do it while she's sleeping. That way, it doesn't maybe make too much noise, or I'll have someone watch her while I do it, because I swear to you, if I do it and she kind of sees that something's up and it messes up her world and it's just, out of the norm, she will come to me, Dad, what are you doing? And I get bombarded with like 30, 40 questions. Now, here's the thing. Ask my wife how that works between me and her. She'll tell you I have 30, 40 questions, but they're legitimate questions, so that's my defense. But with her, it's like I don't mind answering her questions. It's just what gets me is that she doesn't retain the information, or you could just tell it's not going from dot to dot. It's not connecting dots. It's just not connecting with her. So it's like, I wouldn't mind continuing with that, but it's like, whenever I do the work, it's like sometimes I just want to get it done, be done with it, move on, you know. But I probably should do better and educate her on those things so she kind of knows it. I'm sure I'll get better at that, but anywho's the point is, this is I'm gonna be talking about electrical work, and those are the three important lines. Um, Keep in mind that when you're doing that, and then I do see even those three important lines. Make sure the ground, the bare copper, is actually bonded or screwed down to a a proper place. Make sure it's affixed properly, because I can't tell you, whenever my wife and I bought this house, yeah, the you're supposed to get what do they call those people, that an inspector, a home inspector. Now, granted, back when we got the house, the person who we got, he claimed himself to be home inspector. However, this was the first time my wife and I bought a house, um, and so it was a living and learning experience at the same time. As long as things worked, we didn't really care. I mean, were we kind of under pressure? The location that we got our house is an excellent location. The turnover rate is super low. So it's like, when there's a house that goes up for sale, now the turnover rate when the house goes up for sale, super quick. Uh, the houses don't go cycle. No, typically when a house gets sold, people stay in that house for a hot minute. Then when it does go up for sale, you want to get up on it because they sell quickly, and that's no lie. Uh, but getting back to the electrical thing, when you're messing with it, make sure the ground is mounted down. So typically, when you're doing a light fixture, you want to mount the ground screw to the housing bracket, whether it be a ceiling fan or something. There's going to be a housing bracket that kind of houses all the wire. So the wire comes in from the ceiling, or from the attic, comes in, typically inserts itself into the housing mount, and then you want to make sure that that ground line is affixed to that, as well as the ground line from the fixture itself. Make sure any components that you have in there, all the ground lines go to that one central location. That way, the form voltage, it's going somewheres. Because what's going to happen is, when the line from the breaker box gets all routed from the attic down to that one housing place, then what's going to happen is, from the light fixture or whatever you got in there, in that one spot, when that has it gets a quick flash or something, or a surge, that's going to get connected to the line that goes all the way to the breaker box, which then in turn exits the house via the ground rod on the outside. Hopefully your house is, or the place that you live, is grounded and bonded properly. I've seen a lot of places where the ground wire is just kind of floating around, and I just think, I was like, that can't be good. And yeah, so I would use my FED, my foreign electric detector. Didn't go off at all. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be safe. I'll be safe. So when I'm trying to move the ground wire away from me so I can do some work, of course, I get bit. I'm like, yeah, the FED didn't do its job at the time. Lovely. You know, like I said, it happens. You can definitely get a false negative there, where it lies to you. That's why you gotta be careful. I thought I was, but things happen. But anyways, when doing electrical work, be mindful of that. And if you're gonna be, maybe adding an outlet or adding a switch somewhere, because you're adding a whole nother fixture where there wasn't one present, as opposed to just replacing one, make sure before you do all that, when you go up in the attic, that you turn the breaker off, because generally speaking, unless you know exactly what breaker those lines are going to, which is going to be hard to identify that considering all the insulation that's up in there, it's better to just turn the main breaker off. That way you can assure yourself that when you're messing with it, it should be on. Now, granted, if you still get bit, which I have before, just because there's just a little bit lingering around, at least it's not going, it's not that bad. But with that being said, make sure whenever you're in the attic doing that kind of stuff, you have some sort of junction box, because if you don't have that, and it's just loose wires floating around, even with wire nuts, that's considered a fire hazard, and you can end up setting your house on fire, and that's never a good idea. That's never good. Not saying that we're mean to do that, but still. And that goes for adding any electrical fixtures if there wasn't already one present, because I can almost promise you that if there was one present, more than likely there's a junction box for, you know, combined circuits somewheres. So with that being said, just make sure the bonding is done correctly, um, and all that, and you should be rock solid. Make sure you have a pin tester to check for that. Like I said, when it comes to my household, I tend to try and find try and first find the breaker. Uh, but if I'm just not in the mood to play Let's Find Waldo, I'll just shut the main breaker off. It'll be just as good. Um, but if in your case, if you're dealing with something that you know you don't necessarily want to shut the power off to the rest of the house or whatnot, it's a good idea to go ahead and get that taken care of. Just find the breaker. And another good key thing to do is whenever you're doing this kind of stuff, and as soon as you finish the work and you remember what breaker it was, before you put the wall plate back on, write what number of breaker you shut off. That way, when you go back to that one for whatever the case may be, bad switch, whatever, or you wanna make some modifications to the light fixture itself, or change the style of the switch. Oh, that was this breaker. Okay, go flip that breaker. Done deal. You don't have to find Waldo no more. But those are some good tips and features that I've seen some electricians do, or journeymen do, and I was like, that's smart. Um, but make sure you keep those in mind. Make sure things are in a junction box in the attic, and you should be rock solid. Other than that, yeah, can't really think of anything else when it comes to electrical work. But just know that I'm always here for y'all. If you have any questions about this, shoot me a message. I've got my website up, phillipscomputerrepair.com. I've got a Facebook business page, Phillips Computer Repair. Find me there. You can find me on Google Maps, Apple Maps, Yelp. I'm on YouTube. I'm on TikTok. Um, I'm here to answer any questions that you might have. All right. Well, again, my name's Philip with Phillips Computer Repair. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and that was your daily tip and trick of the day. Y'all take care.